Come here, girl. For many people, animals are an extremely important part of their lives. Animals can be their best friends, their working companions, or their guardians and protectors. Hello, Mr. Salavante. This is my oral presentation on Timothy Finley's novel, The Wars. Animals can symbolize different characteristics. For example, a dog can symbolize loyalty, a rabbit innocence, or a dove peace. Furthermore, in the novel The Wars, Finley contrasts the brutality of war with the peaceful nature of animals in situations of empathy, innocence, and life and death. Empathy is a prominent theme throughout the novel The Wars. Finley often showcases situations where the humans do not display empathy towards other humans or animals. To further highlight the savage nature of humans that can be brought out by war, he showcases situations where the animals are more capable of empathy than the humans. A prime example of lack of empathy from the humans in the novel is when Captain Leather refuses to save the horses from certain death. On page 176, Captain Leather declines Robert's request to retreat with the horses, saying, "What would it look like? And we should never live it down." He is not concerned about the horse's safety. He is only concerned of how bad it may look if Robert was to retreat with them. Later in the book, Finley contrasts Captain Leather's lack of empathy when he showcases the empathy the horses have. This happens when Robert and the horses are escaping, when they come across a train full of more horses. On page 183 in the novel, when they got to the first of the cars, the horse stopped. She threw her head back and whinnied. Other horses answered from inside the car. "All right," Robert said, "then we should all go together." For this mare to stop and to refuse to go on until all the other horses were free and safe shows how these animals can have empathy and concern for others. Having these animals display this basic human quality of empathy when the humans cannot further highlights the brutality of humans and war. Another example of the humans' lack of empathy in the novel is the situation with Rowena and her rabbits. Due to her condition and gentle nature, Rowena Ross symbolizes innocence. However, early in the novel, she accidentally falls, which leads to her needless death. In the novel, Robert and Mrs. Ross have an argument of what to do with her pet rabbits. Why do the rabbits have to be killed? Because they were hers. But that can't possibly make any sense. Nonetheless, they must be killed. Page 22 and 23. Finley then contrasts Rowena's accidental and needless death with the intentional but equally needless death of her rabbits. Mrs. Ross is showing no empathy for these creatures and justifies their death as necessary due to Rowena's. As Robert and the readers know, this is not justifiable and is truly an act of murder. By having the rabbits needless by intentional death right after Rowena's needless but accidental death, Finley is using the animals to highlight the lack of empathy from Mrs. Ross and is contrasting the two different innocent deaths. Another major theme of the novel is innocence. Finley uses animals to contrast the loss of innocence that is experienced by Robert by juxtaposing scenes of innocent animals and brutal warfare. Before Robert goes to the war, he has the unique experience running with a coyote one night into a valley. Robert believes that coyote does not know that he is there. However, on page 32, then it looked directly at him, right at Robert, with its tail slightly lowered, and barked. Then the tail began to wag. The coyote had known he was there the whole time, maybe the whole of their run across the prairie. And now it was telling Robert the valley was vacant, safe, and that Robert could proceed to the water's edge to drink. It barked 3 times, a precise announcement it was leaving. Then it turned around and trotted off towards the sun. Robert trusted the coyote, and the coyote trusted Robert because of innocence. They did not know any better, any different, or didn't consider otherwise. Finley then contrasts this scene with another in the novel after Robert had gone off to war. Robert and his company experience a gas attack in the crater. The setting of the scene is very significant because it mirrors the valley scene with the coyote. The crater is shaped like a valley and also has water in the center. After surviving the gas attack, Robert assesses the situation and discovers that he and his comrades are being watched by a German soldier. Eventually, it is Robert's turn to leave the crater and go to safety. On page 130, it was now Robert's turn to climb. He would have to turn his back on the German. Well, there was no other way. He began. However, things changed dramatically. All of a sudden, Bates shouted, "Sir!" What happened next was all so jumbled and fast that Robert was never to sort it out. He fell. He turned. He saw the German reaching over the lip of the crater. Something exploded. The German gave a startled cry and suddenly dead, with his arms dangling down. Robert shoots the soldier without a second thought. This scene is similar but also opposite to the scene with the coyote. In the valley scene, Robert is watching the coyote at the top of the valley, while the coyote is drinking the water at the bottom. However, in the crater scene, the roles are reversed. Robert is at the bottom of the crater, while the German is at the top watching him. In the valley scene, we see the coyote drinking the water. For the coyote, this is a very vulnerable position for him to be in. However, he seems to trust Robert and does not see him as a threat. Robert, on the other hand, is uneasy with the German soldier, and when danger arises, he is quick to act. This highlights Robert's loss of innocence due to the war. When in the position of the coyote, Robert decides to distrust rather than trust the perceived enemy. By using animals, Finley is able to compare the contrast of Robert's innocence before the war and after joining the war. The idea of life and death is already a natural contrast, but Finley continues to use animals to represent life in situations where humans have created death. The lives of animals is contrasted with the deaths of humans in the scene after Robert's dugout is destroyed, and all around him his comrades are dead. The dark was pitted with holes. He kept falling down. He fell down once, and he put his hand in someone's face. He apologized, even though he knew the man was dead. In another hole there was a rat that was alive, but trapped because of the waterlogged condition of the earth that kept collapsing every time it tried to ascend the walls. Robert struck a match and caught the rat by the tail. It squealed as he lifted it over the edge and set it free. Robert wondered afterwards if setting the rat free had been a favor, but in the moment that he did it, he was thinking, "Here is someone still alive." And the word alive was amazing. Page 115. This scene is all about death. All the humans around Robert are dead. The only thing still alive is this tiny little rat that has no significance. Finley highlights the deaths of Robert's comrades by allowing the rat to live when so many humans have died. This further makes the human deaths all that more unnecessary and pointless. Another instance where we see life within death is when Robert releases Rodwell's toad. Early that morning, Robert had released the toad beneath a hedge. Here there was at least a promise of grain. The toad at once had begun to burrow into the welcome mud. It threw the dirt in all directions, making a nest for itself until its eyes were all that could be seen and the hump of its spotted back. Finley uses the toad, a creature who thrives and lives in a muddy climate, to juxtapose the many deaths of the soldiers. The soldiers fear the mud, since it is a common way to die, a dugout collapsing on them or them drowning in the mud. However, this toad loves the mud. It is its natural habitat, and he has no reason to fear it. This highlights the human deaths in the mud by showing a creature who can survive in the mud. Throughout the wars, the animals in the novels are used to symbolize different moments and events. Finley uses these animals to highlight the themes of empathy, innocence, and life and death throughout the novel. By contrasting the horrors of war with the peacefulness of animals, Finley makes humans' lack of empathy, loss of innocence, and abundance of death more emphasized and even more devastating. By using this figurative language to emphasize the horrors of war, Finley is able to accurately convey the message that war brings out the worst in people. It destroys empathy, forces a loss of innocence, and creates death.